I can't take credit for that.
And you slept really well for those 8 hours, I bet, also.
Yeah. Right until the trash can was banged, the rubber was playing, jumping out.
All right, friends. We recognize that the Hogan Administrative Center occupies the land of the Ho-Chunk people. Please take a moment to celebrate and honor this ancestral Ho-Chunk land and the sacred lands of all Indigenous peoples. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Ms. Baumann?
Here.
Ms. Berkdahl? Here. Dr. Garcia?
Here.
Mr. Jackson?
Excused.
Dr. Jimenez?
Here.
Mr. Newmeister?
Here.
Mr. Korberg?
Here.
Dr. Sprague?
Excused.
Ms. Sukala?
Here.
A quorum of the Board of Education is present, so the regularly scheduled meeting of June 26, 2023 is called to order. We will now have the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and face the American flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
So tonight's agenda has previously been distributed to the board with a motion by Mr. Korberg and a second by Dr. Jimenez. We will approve the agenda as submitted unless there's a motion to amend. Hearing none.
Would it require a motion to amend if we were to take something off of a consent agenda, or is that at that item?
That's at that item.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, hearing none, we will move on to our public speakers, which we have nobody registered to speak tonight. So we will move on to the superintendent's consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the items on the superintendent's consent agenda as presented.
Second.
With a motion by Mr. Korberg and a second by Dr. Jimenez, the superintendent's consent agenda will be approved as presented unless there are items that the members want to remove from the consent agenda. All right, hearing none. So moving on to the board's consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the items on the board consent agenda as presented.
With a motion by Mr. Korberg and a second by Ms. Berkdahl, the items on the board consent agenda are approved as presented. Are there any items that members want to remove from the consent agenda? Deb, was this? No?
I can't get my stuff to open up.
I can wait. This one had the minutes from June 5th from the board meeting and then the June 13th workshop summary.
Please, no, I don't have anything.
Okay.
Thank you.
So moving on, did you get that, Laura? I don't remember if I said who.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so we're going to move right into matters reserved for board action. This action item is related to our closed session discussion, so I'll consider a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the conditional enrollment order voted unanimously in favor of during the June 5th, 2023 closed session.
I'll second.
With a motion by Mr. Korberg and a second by Dr. Garcia, the conditional enrollment order is approved. Laura, do we need to do a vote on that one? No, okay. So we will move on to our closed session. So the La Crosse Board of Education will consider a motion to move into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute Section 19.851E for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, and pursuant to Wisconsin Statute Section 19.851G, to confer with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. To wit, request for qualifications, proposal review regarding the sale of Lincoln Middle School, and potential injury claim. Is there a motion to convene to close session?
So moved.
So with a motion by Mr. Korberg and a second by Dr. Jimenez, we will do a roll call vote.
Ms. Berkedal?
Yes.
Dr. Garcia?
Aye.
Dr. Jimenez?
Aye.
Mr. Newmeister?
Aye.
Mr. Korberg?
Aye.
Ms. Sukla?
Aye.
Ms. Baumann?
Aye. All right, we will move into closed session in room 209 upstairs.
And then we'll come back here right after.
Yep. Yes. right, with a motion by Ms. Berkedal and a second by Dr. Jimenez, we are reconvened in open session. Does someone want to make a motion for the closed session discussion?
I move to delay the release of the RFP until we have resolution on the appeal the board plans to submit to city council.
All right. With a motion by Ms. Berkedal and a second by Dr. Jimenez, we will now open it up to discussion about the decision to put off that RFQ and seek an appeal for the historic designation. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know if this works or not, but. While I'm hesitant on the appeal, I do agree that the process is broken and we were, what I believe, treated unfairly on that process, which seems to be the norm. I do worry about, the neighborhood and their concerns with it, and I hope they understand that our goal is to make sure that we are treating them fairly, and we're also in their best interest at large, and doing what we can to make sure that their needs and wants are met. But I for one just don't believe that the process of the Heritage Committee and how they designated this was a fair one on our end, and that's why I have agreed with the appeal. Thank you.
I just don't know that I have adequate information to vote on this information as is provided to us tonight. I do have concerns about the board getting into having appearance of conflict with community actions as we are working to improve our relationships with the community. So I think that's a serious concern. And because all of this is related to the Lincoln building, it makes all of this just that much more delicate with the community as well, which makes this a more difficult decision.
Any other comments from board members?
I think the only thing I would say is I agree with Mr. Neumeister. This is not necessarily an easy decision to make. Ms. Sukla is right. We don't want to be in conflict with any neighborhoods associations or community members. However, I also believe that it is the responsibility of the board to ensure that our taxpayers get a return on their investment. And so I believe that pushing forward this appeal to ensure that in the future we can have a fair process, that the city council can review their process and determine whether changes need to be made, which I think most of us in the room agree that there needs to be changes. This is one way to get it in front of the city council. We could raise it other ways, but I don't know that the council would necessarily take it up. Whereas with this situation, they have to. So I think it brings to light the concerns about the process as a whole for the entire community. It just so happens that it is Lincoln Middle School. So yes, it's going to be a challenge, but I think it's the right thing to do for the neighborhood. I think it's the best way to ensure that their concerns and their ideas that we want to ensure come forward in an RFQ are preserved. So I would vote yes on this.
I believe there's developers interested in this property whose plans would bring great benefit to the neighborhood and that the neighborhood association would feel proud of. And I wouldn't want to inhibit the ability to sell to one of them because of this historical designation.
I have to agree with everything that was stated. I think, the process is concerning, and being notified so close to a potential sale date is a concern for the board and will be, as you mentioned, as we potentially seek to sell other properties if that's to come. And I also think, and I agree with Dr. Jimenez, that what we've heard from the community in listening sessions you know, we want to keep our options open and want to make sure that if the historical designation sticks to the building and the appeal is denied, that we can meet as much of those hopes and dreams that were shared as possible. But I also think that Ms. Sukla has some good points here about making sure that we're not in conflict with the community and sharing, you know, the reasons behind our decision to seek an appeal is important. So. Any other comments from board members? Okay, we will, yeah, go
I
ahead.
would just add that like having the broadest flexibility to both meet the community's needs, the neighborhood's needs, and to gain value for the students of the district is really important. So it seems worth going through the appeal process to offer that. And again, if it remains a historic designation, then we'll still work for that outcome. But we might have more flexibility or more options.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so the motion's there, and now we will need to vote on that motion, correct? So all those in favor, do you want me to repeat the whole motion?
So just for clarification,
Yeah.
we're only voting on
The decision to delay the
Yes, okay, thank you.
RFQ, and then, while
Just
we
wanna
seek
make
an
sure.
appeal. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Abstain.
All right. So we will move on to our other action item for tonight. It looks like the 2022-2023 budget amendment. And I will turn it over to Dr. Engel.
So this agenda item is related to special board action as a result of state statute. Our original annual budget provides the best estimates at the time of adoption of the resources and costs of the activities of the school district for ensuring for the ensuing months of the school year. As the year progresses, however, there may need to be changes to appropriations and purposes. The DPI recommends that a 2/3 vote per Wisconsin statute 6590 sub 5 sub AR, along with the required publication notices, be used for the amount of appropriation and purposes as presented in the line items of the adopted budget that are changed. Ms. Sprang will present the budget amendment from the budget changes that occurred throughout the year, and we're seeking approval from the board tonight.
So last October, the board approved the budget for 2022-23. Each month, you have seen the status of the budget, and every quarter, we review that budget status. Now, at the end of the year, we are required to present a budget amendment to you for board approval if the appropriation or the purpose presented in the line items of the adopted budget have changed. So only the funds and the line items that have changed are reflected in this budget amendment report. You will see that they don't, the columns don't add up to those totals, but the revenue and the expenditures are shown to reflect any change in the projected fund balance. So the majority of these changes in both revenues and expenditures in both the general fund and the special projects fund have to do with reclassification in the amount or the sources and expenditures for federal and state grants. So when we budget for federal and state grants, we budget the same amount for revenue as we do for the expenditures. So the impact on the anticipated fund balance is actually zero. So the WISE Grants reporting portal requires our district to account for matching the grant. And that means, so if something was budgeted in an instructional function, a 100,000, and yet the purpose changed, it would go to a 200,000 support. Those are the differences that we are reporting to you now. The difference also includes 3 new grants this year. We have that we did not know about at the beginning of the year, and that was $780,000 for the evidence-based after-school grant. We had a nursing grant for $52,274 and a professional learning grant for $27,000. So those are included in those dollars there. For the Community Service Fund, the Fund 80 projected fund balance remains unchanged as the food pantry donations, which are held in Fund 80, impact the revenue and the expenditures in the same way. So, as required by statute, a roll call vote of the board is required for the budget amendment approval, and a Class 1 notice will be published within 15 days. So do you have any questions? Yes.
So, is there any opportunity, I mean, you received those grants months ago, is there any opportunity that the board could receive those or accept those or make this adjustment? Because now the money's already spent. I mean, it seems if the board's going to make a meaningful action, I mean, we're doing it only because it's statutorily compliant, but if we're going to make a meaningful action, it should be when we receive the funds, not after the money is spent. So is that something that we could look at doing more frequently?
Well, we haven't actually spent these, because some of these grants have been allocated to us maybe in the last few months, and they do not expire until perhaps the end of 2024. So we do this.
But we're just talking about the July 1st, 22 through June 30th, 23 budget right now, correct?
Correct. But these were received, the allocation was received, meaning that if we are going to spend it, we can spend it in this year, but our revenue, these are all reimbursable. So we never received the funds yet until we spend them. So if we don't spend them, we aren't going to receive the funds. This is designating an allocation in a budget. This is not allocating actual expenditures that you will see at the end of the year.
I understand that, but again, it's all done, the transactions have occurred, and so for us to approve it really is, we're only doing that out of compliance versus any meaningful dialogue.
And the board certainly could do that. It's just that the board gives us the authority to make these budget amendments during the school year so that it does not keep us from spending or going out for a claim. And so it is just a revision of a budget.
I understand you have to take action and do what you need to do to keep operating, but there's also nothing that says in January, here's catching up, here's what's happened so far, and then again in June or some period of time. I think that'd be a more meaningful discussion. My other question is, how do we achieve additional revenues in the capital projects fund?
We receive additional funds in the capital projects fund through many sources. We could get it from selling something or having additional rebates on something that came in. So there could be changes there.
So how did we earn this $216,991?
Well, that was, I can tell you. In Fund 40, that was a reallocation of dollars in a different area. So the revenues and other financing sources, I believe we closed out some capital projects, if I'm not, and so those dollars were put back into Fund 40 for future purposes.
But it looks like we spent it.
No, this is just a budget. This is just a budget. This is not expenditures or actual money coming in. This is a budget.
Okay, maybe I'm not understanding, because usually a budget adjustment is something is changed in terms of money you've received and then money you're going to spend as a result of the money you've received. So is this, and the purpose of budget adjustment is usually to typically more closely align actual transactions with a budget.
Right, or potential transactions,
Right.
meaning that.
Through June 30th, and this is,
Right, So it's not affecting, what you really want to be concerned at is it affecting our revenues and expenditures overall that would affect our ending fund balance at the end of the year? And so when we put these in, especially the grants, it's a revenue that matches the expenditure, and it's not affecting the overall fund balance at the end of the year. That will be your actual expenditures and revenues. This is just a budget adjustment, an estimated guess, or just a recognition in our general ledger that these funds are available and allocated to us. Because we now have something called Wise Data Finance that draws from our general ledger every night to make sure that our books agree with DPI's allocations of any of these grants. So we just have to have our
But
budget
this is
returned.
to align the budget and correct the budget through June 30th. This is June 26th. So your guess is going to be probably pretty close. I get there's a few things still finishing up for the fiscal year. So these numbers pretty closely align the revenues that were actually received and pretty closely align the expenditures actually that occurred.
Not necessarily. So it's just making our budget agree with what is available and recognizing grants.
So like with federal funds, if we get there's this out-of-school time grant, let's say, and we get money to spend for summer school activities, we're required, when we get that, to put in a entry in the revenue and the expenditure that are matching. Even though we're not going to spend those funds until July and August, which is not in this fiscal year, it's in the next fiscal year. So we're required to enter both the expenditure, the revenue and the expenditure so that they're matching, so it zeroes out, even though we haven't spent the funds, because it's just a budget. It's not the actual expenditures.
Budget for what time period? Maybe that's where I'm confused.
For 22-23, for this school year that we're still in, even though we're going to spend the money in the next one, we're required to balance it out in the current year. And that's...
You can always move that to the 2024, the funds,
Yeah,
which is normal.
funds will be spent in the next year, but we have to account for it all in this year.
A placeholder.
Yeah.
And this is just a budget. It is not the actual expenditure. And because these are reimbursable grants, the money is really not in the bank account until we spend it. It just needs to be budgeted.
I mean, is there a way that this tool could be where, because our public expects that what's in our budget looks like what we actually do in transactions. And if we have to do some certain things to keep auditors happy because we received the grant on May 13th, we have to book it even though we plan to spend it, most of it in the next school year because of how our fiscal year ends. Is there some way we can account for those in different lines so that we can show that to the public? Because this looks like we have a budget and then we have transactions and they aren't related. And that doesn't sound, I don't think that's something the public wants to hear.
Well, and remember, these are federal and state funds. These are grants. These are not, I'm not bringing you a budget revision to say, oh, we overspent in an area, so now we have to create a budget. Because if that was the case, you would have seen a change in the projected fund balance. These are not the budget, general fund budget dollars. That's where you want to be concerned.
The fund balance that's going to be available, what percentage is that of our operating expenses, and how does that match up with our policy?
Well, that's our projected right now. That's not what we will expect. That right now, that's about 29% of our fund balance. But this is just a budget projection.
And on our consent agenda, we have a kind of a running expenditures and revenues statement. What do we call that thing? It's under the superintendent's consent agenda. It is the May board financial report, so that's kind of like the actual expenditures and revenues to date. That's different than a budget, which is, accounts for all sorts of things that we did and did not spend, but have to book there as a part of good financial procedures.
For the viewing public's record, I'm not new to finances or school finance, so I
That's
just want
complicated.
people to understand my questions aren't coming from an uneducated person. I've spent a career in this field, and I think we're just calling things different things in this discussion.
Absolutely. No, school finance is incredibly complicated. I mean, just today I was talking to Patty. Our auditors are in, they're looking at our books, and they're asking questions that we've never heard before that don't, it's ever changing. There's new regulations, there's things that are always different, so I appreciate the complexity.
What is the purpose of us approving this? I'm still unclear if it has no relationship to what our books are.
It's required by state law for us to indicate to the public when we change, from one line item to another if it meets certain criteria. And so, when we get federal grants in and these things move around, we have to report this to the public. It's good transparency. It's something we've done.
We'll take as many grants as we can get.
Exactly, and I frankly, like, this school district has sought and received so many grants. It's really impressive and really to the benefit of our students. The out-of-school time grant, the mental health grant, we're putting in for a $5 million, I think it's $5 million for the community schools grant. We continually seek these things, and so I hope we have lots of budget adjustments every year as we get awesome grants. And I think there's maybe a way we can ensure that the board's notified when we receive them in a consistent way, and that might help when we get to this point, so we can draw back on our memory about, oh yeah, that's right, there was that thing.
Don't we receive a list of all contributions? We get a list of grants already.
Those are donations usually.
So you don't count.
We have not. We
Right.
can certainly include that.
Absolutely.
When we are notified of a grant. Mhm.
And then we get the financial report that has the budget to actual in it. And there's always explainable variances in the budget to actual. And I think adjusting the target as needed is necessary and important. And we also have other documentation in our board packet that's the budget to actual.
I understand that a budget, when you do it in October, is simply a plan, your best plan, and then life happens and things change. Approving something this late in the game seems to really not provide any meaningful input from the board.
Yeah, it's a procedural thing that the board has done in every school district I've been in every year for as long as we've had these statutes.
So if you look, I just was curious too, if you do the little magnifying search glass and search for budget amendment, you can see all the previous year's documents for the budget amendments that have come before the board at this time. Then it goes back, I don't know how far we keep documents in board docs, but it goes back, I think, to 2017, I saw some in there.
It goes back to 2004
Okay.
in board docs at least, and then I have previous electronic copies, and then I have all the paper copies.
Nice.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the 2022-23 budget amendment as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Korberg and a second by Ms. Birkedal. We'll now have a roll call vote on this.
Ms. Barkall?
Aye.
Dr. Garcia?
Aye.
Dr. Jimenez?
Aye.
Mr. Neumeister?
Aye.
Mr. Korber?
Aye.
Ms. Sukla?
Nay.
Ms. Baumann?
Aye. All right, so the motion is carried. We'll move on to our next matter reserved for board action. And at this point, we could take a motion to open discussion. Is that typically, or should we just begin discussion?
Your call.
Let's just begin discussion. We'll do the motion after. So if you recall, last week, we approved the monitoring report, and we had some discussion about indicators that the board was either happy with or wanted to see more of, and it looks like indicator 7 was added to 12.1. And I'll turn this over to Dr. Engel in a second, but as we think about this, like, keep in mind that we aren't wordsmithing the indicator. We're either accepting or saying not good enough, take it back, write it again. So Dr. Engel, you want to take it from there?
Yes, so this part of our monitoring process is where we bring forward the monitoring report template that we'll use for the following year. And so it's helpful for us to have these changes now so that we can gather that evidence throughout the next school year to present when we come back. From what we heard as administration, an interest in bringing the long-range facility plan to the board on at least an annual basis and anytime significant changes are made. And so we added that as an indicator. And otherwise, we have left the rest the same as they were historically. So seeking approval.
Okay, board members, what do we think about the addition of indicator 7 and the remaining indicators?
I'm fine with the indicators. I understand we're going to have a long meeting coming up at some point to review all of our policies. My concern is perhaps more with OE 12 and where the facility, long-range facility plan, who's really the owner of that. Is that really something we delegate to staff? Is it something the board should possess? And I think that will be a rich discussion then, but the way the indicators are is fine with me.
Okay. Other comments? All right. So hearing none, I'll consider a motion to approve the recommended addition.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommended addition of OE 12.1, indicator 7, to the OE 12 facilities monitoring report.
A second.
All right, with a motion by Mr. Korberg and a second by Dr. Garcia, we'll approve this with a vote. So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, the motion is carried. And we'll move on to OE 2. Again, we are just, let me look at my notes. Yeah, so we received this report as an information item, and it looks like now we're voting on compliance of the policy. So I will consider a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion that in regard to the monitoring report for policy OE2, emergency superintendent succession, and with respect to the provisions of policy BSR5, superintendent accountability, the Board of Education concludes that the superintendent and district are in compliance.
Second.
So with a motion by Mr. Korberg and a second by Dr. Jimenez.
Just to clarify, how is this item different, 6.06 different than 7.01?
So we are approving the monitoring report in 6.06, and then we're looking at discussing if there's indicator changes or template changes in that.
Thank you.
7.0. So that's looking forward. This one was coming back.
I was folding them differently.
Yeah, I have notes to keep because I also
Thank you.
get scrambled. All right, so we'll do a vote on that one. So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion carries. We'll move on to our information item. We're looking forward. So this is the opportunity for administration to present any recommended changes to the monitoring report template, as well as to discuss any changes board members may suggest. And it looks like the administration does not have any recommended changes for this one. Board members, we have an opportunity to discuss that. This was kind of a short and sweet one.
Yeah, straightforward.
I don't think there's anything to change.
All right.
I appreciate your responsiveness in putting this on the agenda. This is new process for us.
Well, accolades should go to Ms. Steigerwald
Thank
for
you,
being
Laura.
so organized and wonderful. All around amazing. Okay, so we're not voting on that. That's an information item. Ms. Steigerwald, just if the board has no additional indicators in the administration, will we see that again to approve it? That'll just become, okay.
We will
So we
continue
will
as
not
is.
see that next time like we did with OE12. All right, so we can move on to announcements, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Bergedal.
I If anybody would care to swing a club in support of a Crosse Public Education Foundation, the annual Bowtie Classic is coming up September 7th, and they still need quite a few teams to sign up. It's going to be super fun. And there's a good chance you'll beat me. So there's that.
I'll be having hip replacement that day. I apologize.
Oh, no. You could drive the cart.
Excuse. I don't know. Well, we'll see. I mean, they could probably wheel me in there.
All right, the only announcement I'll share tonight is that the reminder that July 3rd, there is no board meeting. So we'll meet again on July 17th, I think is the Monday. Yep. Dr. Engel, do you have any announcements?
Just a couple announcements. The legislature and the governor have made a deal on education funding, kind of previewing the state biennium. A strategy used recently is to create separate bills that feed into the biennium as opposed to put them all through the biennium where the governor has a stronger veto pen. Some of the adjustments that were made are a revenue limit per pupil adjustment. All school districts will receive a per pupil adjustment under revenue limits of $325 for FY24 and FY25. The low revenue ceiling limit was raised from $10,000 to $11,000, which won't be of particular benefit to our school district, but does help many of our neighbors. General equalization aid is increased by a little over double. They want to maintain 2/3 funding by the state, 1/3 from local property taxes. Special education aid increased a small amount. It's about 31.5% right now. It's estimated to be about 33.3% in the next 2 years. And then on the school-based mental health grants, they've created a per pupil categorical aid of $31 in FY24 and 25 as opposed to a competitive grant process. So that will help us do a few things. The compromise also included a substantial increase in the per pupil voucher payments. Voucher payments for private schools went from $8,399 to $9,500 for K-8. And for grades 9 through 12, from just over $9,000 to $12,000, so almost a $3,000 increase for private school students when public schools are getting $325. But that was the compromise the legislature and the governor arrived at. There is still time to advocate on the biennium. The bill has not been passed yet, so reach out to your legislature or the governor if you want to weigh in. We had another great facility advisory committee meeting on June 12th, and there's an upcoming meeting on July 19th. Our website has fantastic information, including recordings of the proceedings, so encourage people to seek that out if they are interested. And then one kind of impromptu thing, there was a fire at Central last week. It was caused by an old transformer in the basement. We are very thankful to the La Crosse Fire Department who responded very quickly. Helps that they're across the street, of course. But they went through a lot of effort that day to find, water and put out the fire as quickly as possible. It was a very hot day, and we totally appreciate how quickly they got through the building. It made an impact on limiting the damage, so that was fantastic. The south portion of the building is open right now. Kudos to our custodians and building engineers and our partners in private industry who have helped us get that done. Really 24-hour operations for a little while and really going above and beyond to help us out and work for the school district. So totally appreciate that. Continuing to work on repairs to bring the whole building back online as quickly as possible. But we're able to run summer school for right now and evening events in the Hackett gym. So.
I just wanted to publicly acknowledge Coach Fergit. There was about 500 7th and 8th graders and their families in the gyms for a basketball tournament when it happened. And he successfully got everybody out of the building and had most of them hide in the baseball dugouts because he wasn't sure, what it was. Yeah. So he did really good work.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Okay, so we can move on to agenda planning.
I'll make a motion to approve the July 17th, 2023 Board of Education agenda with any additions or corrections.
So with a motion by Mr. Forberg and a second by Dr. Jimenez. We'll do a vote on that one. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay. Board debriefing. So I spent a little bit of time reflecting on what I thought would make sense for this. And I'd like to share the responsibility for watching the meetings and then reflecting on what we did well, what did not go well, and what we should do to improve. And I was thinking board members would, rotate beginning with the president and then working through officers and then cycle through all the members and repeat. So today I'm the president and the first one to do it, and we'll try it out. And if this format doesn't work, we'll do something else. But this is part of our policy to do board debriefing. What we had before, I struggled with a little bit just in how to get conversation going. So I think we did well. I think we had great conversation tonight, and I appreciate everybody bearing with me as I work through all the procedural hurdles, which will forever be hard for me. What did not go well? I have a hard time being critical. I think always keeping in mind as we're discussing things, the purpose of the discussion, and this is a struggle for me because I love getting into the weeds and asking all the questions, but always kind of reframing questions and thoughts as, will this help me make the decision that I need to make right now? And what do we need to do to improve? I think just continuing working through those procedural things and continuing the conversation is a great start. I'll turn it over to board members if they want to reflect on any of those things with me, and we'll just kind of keep it free form.
I think this is our first meeting after our training that we had, and so I think that taking that training and that knowledge and applying it over time will help us improve how we work in meetings and our purpose and our vision, how we operate. So I look forward to that journey together, and I would agree with you. I think we did things very well. I would also commend us with being able to discuss topics that we may not agree, but that conversation happens at this table, and that it is shared at this table, and that once the decision is made, no matter where anybody voted, we move forward as one unit, and that is the purpose of our board. So I appreciate the work that was done tonight, and I look forward to seeing more of that.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, we will move to adjourn the workshop following this. Is there a motion?
So second.
So the motion by Mr. Neumeister and a second by Dr. Jimenez. Are there any objections? I'm hearing none. The meeting is adjourned. We'll take a 5-minute recess before beginning the workshop, which will be right here. So.